Good morning. Welcome to Virtual Reality's Material World. My name is Cindy Brocker. I'm the NCECA Communications Director, and it is my distinct honor to be here to introduce this panel today, and it is probably the thing that I'm most looking forward to at the conference this year. So I would like to, well, normally I would ask you to turn your cell phones off, but that seems a little counterintuitive. So I would say if you could put them on vibrate so they're not disruptive, and then definitely if you're tweeting or Instagramming things from here, use the hashtag #VirtualClay. You probably all know that already. I'd also like to put in a plug to vote for NCECA board members. You can do that electronically. It is very important. These are the people that are going to be making decisions about future conferences and things along those lines, so super important. You can do that down at the kiosks by registration. I'd also like to ask you, if you're using the NCECA app, to definitely check in at this session so that we have a count of how many people were here, and rate the session afterwards, because that will really help me, and this is true for all your sessions, that will help myself and the other people figure out how to prioritize conference content in terms of getting it up on the blog or YouTube or whatever. So at this time, I would like to introduce to you one of my personal clay heroes who I was very excited to meet at this conference, the moderator of the panel, Ben Carter.
So I see a lot of familiar faces out here, so I really appreciate all of you guys coming. The people that aren't familiar, please come up and talk to us after, because we are here to meet you guys and to talk to you about social media, and it goes beyond the presentation. So I wanted to let you know a little bit about the schedule for today. We're going to do some quick presentations on our social media history and the things that we do within the field, which will be about 20 to 30 minutes. Then I'm going to ask these guys questions for about another 30 minutes, and then I'm going to open it up to you guys. There is a Facebook event called Virtual Clay that people have been posting questions on, as well as people sending us questions on Twitter. So hopefully, if you guys have done that, we might use one of your questions today. So we're going to start with a few images here with our nice thing that Adam made up. So my name is Ben Carter. I started my social media history in Shanghai, China, where I was a resident as well as a worker for the pottery workshop. When I moved there in 2010, my world was turned upside down in all of the right ways. Like, I moved to a big city for the first time. I was running a clay center for the first time. I was involved teaching people that didn't speak the same language as me. And the way that I dealt with that, the feeling of being isolated, is that I really started to be involved in my own blog, which is called Tales of a Red Clay Rambler. I had started blogging before that, but when I moved to China, it became a lot more real for me, because the community of clay artists in Shanghai is actually really small. There's about 20 to 25 million people in the city, depending on how you count the boundary, but I could count the number of my clay friends on one hand. So it was my way to sort of reach across the pond to the US and keep involved with that. And through that process, I actually started to connect with people all around the world. I also do Facebook. Everybody does Facebook, so I don't really need to say much about that, but I can tell you that it's a highly developed community already, and I think that that's its greatest value, is that almost all of us in this room are probably on Facebook in one form or the other. There's also a really nice thing about Facebook where there is built-in exposure, because it's so easy to share things between people, to like things, to share them, to spread them very quickly. So the ability for something to go viral, so to speak, on Facebook among your own community is really, really high. I like to use Twitter because of the variety of information that I can get on there. It is a self-edited news source, meaning that I can choose which types of information that I want. So if you look at my Twitter feed, I have everything from Obama to a couple jazz musicians to NPR, to Michael Klein, to Carol, to Adam, to all these people that I follow. And it's very simple. It's one of the simplest forms of social media. YouTube is a really extremely powerful tool for reaching a younger audience. Adam has done a lot of work on YouTube, and I think he'll talk a little bit more about that. But you can see from the videos that he's posted, you can reach people all around the world, regardless of language, because it's a completely visual medium. And because the video is moving, we don't necessarily need to speak the same language to understand the content. and that's really valuable. Instagram is one of my newest but most favorite forms of social media. It is also, I think, one of the easiest. It's just a matter of posting an image. I do that for two different reasons. One is visual inspiration. I often will look through the feeds and see other people's work or see places that they've traveled, and it really makes a difference to me. I often feel really inspired after spending just 5 minutes looking through Instagram. The other thing that I use it for is quick documentation of myself and the people that I visit and interview through my podcast and my blog. Eventually, after doing the blog for quite a few years, I wanted to start a podcast because I wanted to get all of you guys involved with the conversations that I was having. So I was living overseas still, and I had the ability to sit down with a lot of my heroes that were coming through Shanghai, and I was meeting them and talking to them, but I felt like our conversation was just ours. It wasn't spreading far enough. But a podcast allows me to share those conversations with you, and it also allows me a platform and a reason to talk to my heroes. And I really take advantage of that. And I've interviewed all three of these guys because they are three of my heroes. I wanted to real quick just talk a little bit about how I choose between platforms. If you're not involved with social media, you might sit in this audience and feel a little overwhelmed because there's so many different options. In the conference catalog, I put an image of all the social media platforms that are available today. And it's almost hundreds of them. It's really phenomenal. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how I determine which one I'm going to use. One of the big questions for me with Twitter versus, like, let's say blogging is what is the duration of the information that I'm putting out there, and what's the shelf life? So for instance, in Twitter, people usually don't read backwards. So Twitter is about something that's happening now. It's the news of the present. So let's think about the Arab Spring. You know, there was an amazing amount of organization and information that was spreading all across the Middle East in people actually creating revolution and change towards democracy in their lives. Twitter was a great way to do that. But very rarely, even though that's an important event that all of us know about, I very rarely do any of us in this room read back to those tweets. Now, blogging is different. I often will read backwards on a blog. In fact, I'll often find a blogger that I like and then spend a while reading their old posts. So blogging, because it's a longer format, because it's not 140 characters like Twitter, it actually allows you to really get in depth, to really jump in, and that has staying power. And that staying power is a quality that social media has, but that's often overlooked. Another thing to think about is the actual interface that you use. So Instagram is completely intuitive. So if you're looking at the Instagram layout here, you can see that little home button that looks like a house. That's very, very intentional. It's so easy. Even little kids can get on Instagram and figure out, oh, if I want to search something, I'm going to click the compass. And if I want to take a picture, I'm going to click the little logo that looks like a camera. Or if I like something, I'm going to click the heart. It's completely intuitive. On the right there, that's Audacity. That's what I use to do my podcast. That is not intuitive at all. And it's taken me a lot of time on YouTube watching videos and trying to figure out how to use it. So that's something to consider in your own practice, is how intuitive is the interface. Another really important thing for me is the time that I'm spending, is it rewarded in the short term or the long term? So I'd like to talk about the difference between likes versus relationships. So when I post an image, you can see here, this is from Statagram. It's an Instagram tracker. It will say, oh, 94 people clicked that image and said they like it, which is nice. It's instant gratification. And I'd be lying to you if I didn't say that I don't love that. You know, I love putting out an image and that instantly I'm getting that feedback. You know, within 10 minutes, I can often have a little virtual critique on my new work that would have taken me hours or days to find the right people to get them together to tell me how they like that work or don't like that work. Instagram makes that possible in a second. But that's short-term gratification. The long-term gratification is that a lot of my friends I've met through social media, and then they have actually turned into really good friends of mine. And Carol's a great example of that. This is a picture of her and Jason Burnett and I at the Aramont Surface Conference last year. So it's a different reward system, but there's always rewards involved. So if you're looking to get involved in social media, that would be something to think about when you're choosing the platform. One of the last things I'm going to talk about is it fun? A lot of times I'm sitting at home on my computer when I could be out running, I could be out swimming, I could be in my studio, I could be doing a whole host of other things. So if you don't find social media to be fun, that's okay. There's no reason that you need to get involved with this because you think you should. There is no should in social media. It's an opt-in program. It's your choice as the individual to choose how you want to get involved and what the level of involvement will be. So a lot of times my screens at home look like this, and I'm switching back and forth between social media. One of the things that I'm really interested in, though, is how social media can be successful. For me, I had to define that. It's a self-defined thing. I talked about likes, that you could have likes be kind of like a way of determining success. But actually, I don't think that's success. I think that's instant gratification. And no matter how good that feels, that pales into comparison to dialogue. And for me, social media that leads to dialogue, that's success. So I interviewed Bobby Silverman last summer, and we were talking about his work, and I got into a great conversation afterwards with Carter Gillies, who is a blogger. And we talked at length about some of the perspectives on tradition that Bobby was talking about and that we were discussing. So to me, that's success. When you have one point of social media that turns into many points of conversation, that's as good as it gets. And that's a self-defined thing. That's something that I've chosen. And I encourage all of you guys sitting in the audience, if you get involved with social media or if you're already involved, to choose your own level of success. Because it's so easy to look at someone else's presence in social media or in the gallery world or in the academic world and say, well, I'm not good enough. I'm not measuring up. But that's not the point. The point is that it's an opt-in program. We choose how we're going to define ourselves within this realm, and we choose how we define our own success. So I want to pass it on to Carol, who's going to talk a little bit.
Okay, so that wasn't a tough act to follow. Ben's got like the slickest voice out there. It's incredible. So now that he's sort of explained everything about social media that you need to know, I'm going to talk about cats, because that's what the internet's about. No, well, maybe a bit. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take everybody's picture. I'd like you to all say hi to my mom. Thank you. So my approach to social media and what I've been doing is sort of maybe about a 10-year process from when I really started to get going with it to where I am now. And probably the reason why people know who I am is because of this blog. I never really went out planning anything social media related, and I often have people come to me and say, oh, I just don't know where to jump in, I don't know how to start. And about 8 years ago, I had no idea where to start, and I didn't know where to begin. And a good friend of mine, Mel Robson, who's an amazing ceramic artist in Australia, I just finished grad studies, and I was moving back to Canada, and I was feeling really isolated. There was a community there, but it wasn't the same sort of academic community that I'd had overseas. It wasn't this tight-knit studio group, and I was really desperately craving community and feedback and interaction. And my friend Mel said to me, she's like, well, just get online, get a blog. And she had a really successful blog at the time, and so I said, okay, I'll do that. And I got on there and I went, I have nothing to say. And I think that's what most people say to me when we talk about social media and stuff. They go, I can't write a blog because I have nothing to say. And that's exactly where I was in the beginning. So I did a couple posts that were like, this is who I am. This is the kind of work I make. And then I went, oh, this is ridiculous. And what I found is that being right out of grad school and stuff, I was looking for all these opportunities online. I was spending all this time looking for residency programs and for different exhibition opportunities and just figuring out what was out there. And, I come from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, so we don't have NCECA every year where there's all these tables and lovely people you can meet. So I was looking for that online to figure out what those opportunities were. And then all of a sudden one day I'm like, well, this is ridiculous. I'm spending hours going through all this information, collecting all this information for myself. I'm just going to put it all here in one place. And that's literally what I started to do. And somehow from there, it went from, you know, a couple little people starting to find me because they were searching for the same sorts of things, and then it grew into being this community of people. For me, the blog serves an amazing, it serves a great purpose in terms of building the community that I wanted, but it also has its limitations. I often get really jealous of some other great blogs that are out there because there's these amazing conversations that are happening. And that was one thing that I found wasn't happening with my blog. And I stopped myself at one point, I'm like, well, but you've got a virtual billboard. You're going and you're taking flyers and you're pinning them up, and people are coming and reading that. Of course, you're not gonna have that. So I've tried over the years to sort of engage with guest posts and all these artist profiles and stuff like that to sort of make it a bit more accessible. But in the end, it's not. And one thing I think we're going to talk today about different platforms and their limitations and their successes and stuff. And so musing has some successes, but it also has its limitations. And that's why I started moving into different social media outlets. And Instagram sort of is one that I hope we talk about quite a bit today, because it's the one that I'm most addicted to, I guess. It's sort of the, you know, visual crack cocaine. It's your eye candy. That you get every day. But it started to fill those voids of dialogue that I was missing with the blog. The blog was me throwing stuff out into this void, knowing that there was people there. Every once in a while I'd be like, is there anybody out there? Check my Google Analytics. Oh yeah, hi. But I wasn't hearing any of these voices back. And it's really interesting because, you know, you come here and it's like, oh, there's all the people. There's these people that follow it. There's these faces suddenly. And I'm talking to you in person now, and I'm not sitting in my pajamas on my couch talking to you. It's a little different. But Instagram became this really amazing platform for me where I felt like, oh, the community's there, and they're talking, and I'm talking, and we're making friends. And Facebook was the same, but Instagram just made it really quick and really fresh, and Ben sort of talked about this. And one thing that I've really felt with Instagram that went even beyond Facebook and the sort of friendships and stuff that you make on Facebook is that it was this idea of like friends. And people always talk about like their Facebook friends. And I've really, even in the last couple of days, really thought about that a lot. And I've decided that I'm gonna stop saying friends like this, because even the amount of hugs that I've gotten in the last couple of days is really amazing. And I've really started to realize that everybody that I've been meeting and I know online, you really actually are who I thought you were. And it's actually, you know, because you sort of think, oh, everybody's putting on a face, you know. And I mean, we all sort of take that selfie 4 times to make sure it's just right. But I've been really, really floored by meeting people and even in 5 minutes going, yeah, I really thought you were kind of like that. That's awesome. And so I'm now sort of saying officially, I'm going to stop saying friends because I really feel like it doesn't matter anymore this day and age where you are or how you're communicating. I've got friends that I haven't seen in 10 years that live in Australia, and I talk on the phone or I talk on Skype. They're as legitimate as somebody that I haven't met face to face in my world. And I think that's a big shift for a lot of people, but it's a kind of exciting shift. And it's one that I've talked to a lot of people too about, you know, we've got young kids and stuff now, and this is just their world, and they are not going to know a time when those people weren't their friends. And so it's really exciting. So that's a lot of why I'm on social media, I guess. So I am on Facebook. We'll probably talk a little bit today about the difference between a public and a professional profiles. You'll see I've got a musing page on Facebook, but I actually don't have a Carol Epps Ceramics on Facebook. And I think this is that's definitely a question that showed up a lot on the Virtual Clay Facebook event page if you were on there. And I think that's one that would be interesting to sort of talk to people about too, because I think there's a bit of a divide on that one. So we'll hopefully get to that. I'm also on Twitter. And I'm also on Pinterest. And I'm curious to talk to people a little bit about that too. It's newer for me, but it's actually one of the ones, aside from the blog where it's like I've got the most followers, which still isn't that much, but we don't communicate on there. And I had a conversation with somebody from Craft BC online the other day about how they're actually starting to use Pinterest in this really interesting way. And I talked to a woman named Heather here the other day about curating shows through Pinterest and all these different things. So it's actually an exciting medium that I think is going to go beyond like picking the paint colors for your living room very quickly. So there's a future to that. There's also some other things that I engage with. Craft House is a really good example. These are Ning groups. There have been some ceramic-focused ones that have been brought up in the past, and that have sort of withered away, and they're sort of hit and miss in terms of success, because it's basically Facebook in a different arena, and it's sort of like a blend between LinkedIn and Facebook, maybe, where you're sort of setting up your more professional, but so we can talk a little bit about that kind of stuff, too. But I'm going to pass it over to Michael.
Hi, everybody. Nice to see y'all. Thanks for all that crystalline description of social media. I'm going to dumb it down a little bit here and show you an image I stole from the internet that somebody wrote on a whiteboard to kind of explain to you, like, and it's probably not very fair, because really, but I think it's funny. So, you know, everybody likes a list, right? We like a list and how do we do things. But I wanted to get this out of the way because so we could really avoid sort of the nuts and bolts and how-tos of social media, because I think it's maybe not as interesting, and it steals away from maybe a more interesting conversation about why we do the social media, the Facebook, the Twitter, you know. So I'm a little bit of a dinosaur, and I literally was a dinosaur potter back in the 90s. I was giving a little sticker, and when I went to a show, and there's a group of dinosaur potters who refused to use any slip casting or anything new or technology. But I always have been interested in the shiny things, and I began a blog in 2007, which nobody really read for a long time because I've been telling anybody about it. But so in the blog, I document what's around me. I take pictures, you know, and I sit down to write. And that was one of the main motivations. Is I was asked for the 100th time to write an artist statement for a show I was going to do, and I was very bad at writing. So I thought that the blog would be a great structure for me to sit down and actually think about writing and do it. And you know, all the while hoping to clarify and order all the thoughts that bounce around in your head, you know, when you're working in the studio. Here's a picture of the landscape that's down the road from me, from my studio. It's the Black Mountain Range. So these became like, I guess I started out with the blog as a sort of a photo blog. I would take a picture of something that happened in the studio or outside the studio that would stimulate some thoughts, and also be kind of a creative channel as well, you know, besides the pottery. So by stopping to take a picture of a landscape or a particular arrangement of tools on my, you know, next to my wheel, these pictures became sort of the narrative that drove the blog, and then the blog went out into the world, and other people could see that. And you know, you've heard the term navel gazing and all these kind of things, but I think for me, it's just an extension of our creativity as artists, and looking for a particular pattern in the studio or in the landscape around us. So I thought the blog would be a great way to market my pots as well. I think that was probably one of my other motivations, is to market my work and get it out there into the world. I would make pots and fill up the table and the shelves, and then I'd brag about it. That's basically what blogging was, bragging. So that's what we do, right? We kind of go to shows and we put our work out and hype it up and hustle it and sell it, and it keeps us in the studio, you know. So blogging for me was sort of that pride kind of thing, you know. It was like taking pride in what you did and say, "Hell, you know, look how productive I am today," you know. Made me feel good, you know. But there was an impulse there that drove it. I also got to buy all kind of good, you know, fun gadgets, you know, and play with that. It's always something I enjoyed ever since I was a little kid, with my little 8-track tape player, you know. 20 years ago, when I started making pottery and buying equipment, I would have never thought to buy a computer, a digital camera, you know, all these kind of tools that we use now to do this kind of marketing and sort of blogging and social media. But I think, you know, they're probably as important tool to use, you know, besides your wheel, your pug mill, your electric kiln, whatever you have. I think they're really essential tools to success. unfortunately, they, oops, I got a wrong slide here. They can become cumbersome. They're around the studio and in this environment that's not very sympathetic to electronics, dust and water and moisture, and now we have little cases that we can use to surround all these objects, these sensitive, electronic devices that help us share, but it's all electronic. Just a few geeky kind of details. We put this stuff out there into the world, and we're curious, like Carol said, we're curious if anybody's listening, if anybody's responding and getting anything out of it. And there's the possibility, maybe a negative possibility, a consequence of all this is it can become a distraction, not only for the artist doing the social media, but also people out in the world reading it and getting notifications and updates about this. But this is a graph. This is of my first year of blogging, and barely anybody's reading it. There's maybe average of 25, 10 or 20 people a day in 2008. But things picked up about a year later, and there's 50 or 100 people a day stopping what they did, what they were doing, maybe taking a break and finding out about the blog and reading the blog. And I think blogs kind of peaked out, as far as maybe pre-Facebook adoption among potters. And in 2010, the blog was pushing about 600 views a day, which is a lot of people, a lot of eyeballs, right? People looking at what I was doing. And so that's it was a very positive thing, and it stroked my ego, like I think Carol said, or maybe Ben, but it's like really positive feedback, because a lot of us do work alone. Even though I'm in the Penland area in North Carolina, near the Penland School, where there's, I don't know how many potters and artists in the area, we tend to all work solo in our studios. So something I didn't talk about maybe was that I really needed that feedback, and that's also a motivation to start the blog. So the blog tells a story, it informs and reveals, and maybe it inspires. Maybe the distraction is worth the price. Here's a graphic that's kind of interesting. This is something I got from the internet. It might be dated by now, but it sort of shows how we're all linked together in the world. These are like little fiber optic kind of details of where the information is traveling around the world. And there's I heard a statistic that 74% of Americans are registered with Facebook. They might not be active users, but 74%. It's a lot of people of all ages. Even kids who aren't even old enough to be on Facebook or lying about their age and getting on Facebook. I'm not sure how long that will last. Maybe one of the things that we'll see in the coming years is Facebook will lose its traction like AOL did back in the early 90s. Who knows? But it definitely is a engaging process. Notice that there's no lines going to China. I believe China banned Facebook in 2013. So here's just some images of my main social media outlets, and this is my blog. This is what you'll see on my blog. And this is my Facebook page, which I do try to meter out the information going out to the world. And the Facebook professional page or the business page is something I really try to work on, as well as the blog. And my Twitter page, which is @Kleinola or Kleiniola. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. So now I'm going to pass this baton on to Adam.
Oh, hey there, guys. Didn't see you. Thank you guys for coming, and thanks for being a really enthusiastic part of not only NCECA, but the Instagram community that Carol mentioned earlier. It's really great to have met a lot of the people here that I've only seen before on Instagram or Facebook. So it's happening in the real world, and we're all doing it. So thank you. I'm going to talk about a little bit of what inspires the posts that I make and what's behind that. So we'll just jump right into some images here. I've been pretty fortunate throughout my career to be able to travel around and you know, learn directly from other people. And part of that motivates me to then pass that along and create this educational opportunity for others in the same way that it was passed on to myself. So in 2008, I was an apprentice at OBrien in just outside of Incheon, South Korea. And the great thing is, at this time, I hadn't even tasted that nectar of Instagram quite yet. So this was, you know, covered by Facebook. And the great thing is that, you know, I think it's interesting to most people in this room to think about going and doing this traditional apprenticeship in some foreign country. And I was able to give a window to my clay community back here in the States and beyond into that experience. And you know, it was educational and just, you know, in some ways just this look into what that day-to-day life was like. And so, you know, other travels, I spent some time at Doug Fitch's studio in England about 2 years ago and got to share a glimpse of his life from my perspective. And now I spend a lot of time teaching, you know, workshops in, you know, Canada and the States quite a bit, and of course over in England there were some workshops as well. And this is from a recent workshop down at Florida Atlantic University, which, let's hear it. Who's here? Woo! All right. A really fun group, but you know, this idea of giving that glimpse into what my experience is like, I should back up a second and say that before I was a potter, I was a photographer. From the age of about, I think I must have been about 9 or 10, I spent a lot of time behind the lens of a camera and, you know, thinking about things like composition and contrast and color and how it all fits together. And that informs my work now. But what I try to do with the images is to create images that are interesting to look at first and then educational. And we'll have conversation here in a little bit about some of the criteria that we look at in content. And for me, especially on Instagram, of course, it's image first. So I'm just going to go through some images here and give you some ideas of my travels. That's me and Dan Anderson some years ago in another life. Woody, are you in the room? Yeah, Woody. Yeah, I picked up this great piece from Woody down also at Florida Atlantic University, and I just wanted to share it with the world. I think it's great, and it makes my studio a better place for me to want to go and work. So thanks, Woody. Got over to Dresden on that England trip and saw some really great stuff, some Meissen porcelain, and, you know, just seeing things that I might incorporate into my work. This is in Berkeley. Wood firing at Utah State there with Mr. Bede Clark running frantically with wood. It's Lisa Hammond's workshop in England, and she was here actually for NCECA, so I don't know. I think she has a presentation actually later today, so that'll be well worth going to have a listen to what she has to say. Alex Matisse, Chris Guston. And, you know, it's this idea of finding people that inspire and inform the work along the way. And for me, a big hero is this man, Mr. Patrick Swayze. But in all realness, you know, individuals like this also really do inspire me. And, you know, speaking of Patrick Swayze, I think that hashtag ghosting is something that we should all know about. Yeah, Mr. Bobby Freedom there. He couldn't be here from Southern California, so I figured I'd put this nice picture up in a 20-foot square so he could be here in spirit. And looking into the future, you know, recently I was amazingly fortunate to be able to become a long-term resident at the Archie Bray Foundation in Helena, Montana. And, you know, you talk about all of these travels that I've done and recorded. Now it's become something that's had this kind of white-hot focus on it at the Bray, where there are countless numbers of amazing things happening at every turn. And so it's been really great. And, you know, my family and I, we made the move from Durango, Colorado, up to Helena. And so to get to capture my children's experience in that setting as well has really been amazing. This is my daughter, Hannah, next to a sculptural piece by Young Mi Kim, who was a summer resident this summer at the Bray. Linda Lopez, you know, just being around people making amazing work. And as a potter, I really hadn't been exposed in a studio setting, especially not having gone through grad school, to as diverse of a crowd that I experienced at the Bray. And it's been amazing. I mean, unbelievable to me that I've been able to be a part of something like this. So a big thank you to the Archie Bray Foundation for that. My son Juno, you guys probably know from Instagram a little bit. Working with JeanNicola Gerard, who was a 2-month visiting resident, or guest artist rather. And they worked together, and my son learned some French, and JeanNicola learned some Korean and English from Juno, and they played some mean ping pong games. Zemmer Poulet, another really amazing sculptor that I get the privilege to work next to in the studio. Steve Godfrey, one of my longtime heroes in clay, and got to work with him for a month at the studio. So just really amazing. And I mentioned it earlier, but you know, my career, not having gone the traditional academic route, has been the generosity of others. And to be able to share this knowledge and to learn from others in a place like the Bray has really been unbelievable. Matt Kelleher, sketches for some larger pieces. And to switch gears, we kind of have an elephant in the room here sitting on the front of this table right here. Mr. Klein, could you hold that mug up, please? This is a mug by Sergei Klein, and I figured it'd be fun to give it to one of you today for coming as a thank you. But for this piece, I actually have decided to change the name from JeanNicola to JeanNicola. So, sorry. Suckers! No, we'll be getting to that later, so stick around. Little teaser for you there. You know, again, like the rest of us on this panel, you know, we use different platforms, but the visual is really something that I've found to be the right path with that photographic background. And so it's Instagram, and before that for me it was YouTube. And you know, I'm really excited to move forward with the Instagram, and I have some ideas that are coming with that will be hopefully more exciting than JeanNicola. But with YouTube, you know, I'm reaching this amazing audience, and I'd encourage you to take a look at the what's the big book that we get? I'm at a loss for words for a second, with our tote bags. The journal, thank you, that's the word. To take a look in there, and just, you know, we all wrote pieces for this panel, and it'll really give you some good insight as to where we're coming from that might not be covered directly in the discussion today. But, you know, looking forward with YouTube, I'm most excited about the projects. I bought one of those GoPros with help from the Rudy Audio grant at the Archie Bray Foundation. It's available to residents there. And the Bray bought me a GoPro and helped me to get a fancy, at least partial, for a computer so that I can document my time in video at the Bray. And I've started making videos and collecting raw footage from all of these artists. You know, we have Giselle Hicks, Peter Christian Johnson, Beth Kavanagh and Alessandro Gallo, Doug Peltzman, myself, and Robin DuPont, just to name a few. So I'll say stay tuned on that, because that will be coming